All right, I think we're going to get started now. Welcome, everyone, to Hairs in the Gate, Stories from the Film Days. We are fortunate enough to have 4 wonderful panelists here today. These are all industry professionals who have worked in the film industry back when we used film in cameras. No more digital sensor, today we have digital sensors, but everyone here has actually worked with actual film cameras. So without further ado, I'm going to just introduce everyone. We're going to have a 45-minute conversation, and then there'll be about 15 minutes for Q&As afterwards. First up, we got Peter Kuttner. Peter has worked much of his career in Chicago as a Local 600 First AC. He's got more than 100 AC credits, including Risky Business, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Groundhog Day, The Breakup, Transformers, and Divergent. Next, we've got Bob. Bob has worked as a camera assistant on movies, TV shows, and commercials throughout his entire career. Just some of his credits include Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Chain Reaction, Save the Last Dance, Stranger Than Fiction, Office Christmas Party, and The Exorcist TV show. Next, we've got Colette Gabriel. Colette worked as a Local 600 film loader and camera assistant in Los Angeles with credits such as The Holiday, Rocky Balboa, and Desperate Housewives. She then moved to Chicago, where she's the general manager of Keslow Camera's Chicago branch and serves as the secretary of Filmscape Chicago. And lastly, we've got Paul DeMart. Paul's first professional film set was Natural Born Killers, and his first film loader job was The Usual Suspects. He's worked as a Local 600 First AC on many movies and TV shows with credits such as George of the Jungle, Anne and the King, The Haunting, Shining Girls, and Roswell. Let's give everyone a nice round of applause. Thank you all for being here today. Very excited to kind of get talking. My first kind of question is just kind of getting a little bit more into everyone's career. So we'll start with you, Peter. Can you talk about when you joined 600, what that was like? What were your first few jobs that got you started?
Sure. It was really difficult to get into the union, even as a white man, which is mainly what the union was in those days. You would think by looking at me that I could just walk in the door. Sorry, but this was not the case. So I was a grown adult when I got in. I was 32 years old or so. I had a kid already. I was looking for insurance, and I really wanted to get in the union, and finally a spot opened up. Although it was, I had a lot of experience non-union, mainly focus pulling, but when I got in the union, one of the reasons that I wanted to get in was so I could work on theatrical feature films. A lot of you guys call them narratives. I think all films should have a narrative, or why watch it? So let's say fiction films. So I had to really go back down and work as a second. We didn't have loaders then. The seconds did the loading. In fact, in those days, you could go off, and I did. My first job on the road was a DP, an operator, a first assistant, and a second assistant. However, it was a 2-camera show, which meant that I was the focus puller on the second camera. I was the second assistant on the first camera, and I loaded all the film. So I was very happy to get into the union, mainly because it gave me the access to fiction films, and that it gave me the benefits that so I knew I needed the health insurance. I didn't worry about the pension because I was going to live forever. What's so funny? What's funny about that? Anyway, I'm on my way. I have almost lived forever. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'll pass it on to you, Bob. How was it? Did you also kind of have a hard time breaking in? And did you start, around your 30s or earlier?
I started earlier than 30s. I went to film school. I went to Columbia. And when I left Columbia, and I had some good teachers. Dave Morenz, another member, was one of the instructors I had in camera seminar. But anyway, and Jack Whitehead, a great BSc DP who had done some work with Hitchcock back a long time ago. He was kind of the elder statesman in the lighting department, believe it or not. It was great. So I had a great experience at Columbia, and when I was getting ready I shot a lot of student films while I was there. That's what I wanted to do. And then so when I left there, I got a job at a production company, which is unheard of. I mean, almost nobody has this story. They got a job as a I got a full-time job at a production company. And I worked there. They did mostly commercials, all commercials, basically. And that's where I began working as getting paid the, princely sum of $200 a week, which I spent all in one place for rent, and that was pretty much wiped me out. So I ate a lot of bad food, whatever I could find, dumpster diving. And then I worked on all their projects, picking up whatever was needed they had a little stage on their second floor. They're in Chicago, a company called Filmfare at the time. And I think Peter might have worked there, and maybe Steve Hiller, who I see out there, might have worked there. It was a union house, and they always had, really good camera assistants coming in. So I'm just there, and I'm picking up wood for their construction of the set or whatever, bagels, whatever I was there to do. And then I was able to parlay that into finding out from one of our local 666 at the time, first assistants, that they were going to be opening up a apprenticeship program, which I got to be a part of in the early 80s. And so I think it was myself and maybe 4 or 5 others. And it was basically administered by someone in the training program. I think Dave Morenz was involved. Peter, you were very involved, and others. So I was lucky. These guys had done a lot of breaking ground to get into the local, and it made it a little easier for me. So it was a 2-year program. So for 2 years, I worked for no money as far as the local was concerned. But I was working for this company, so I was making my sweet $200 a week. So I was getting paid. And then, so eventually I started loading film for the assistants that came in to work on these commercials. So I was learning how to load film in my apprenticeship classes, and then I was putting it in practice at Filmfare, the studio that I worked at. So it was an optimum situation. I really had the catbird seat. I was very lucky. So that's how I started. And then I learned to load all these different types of magazines. So I'll leave it at that.
Great. Colette, I'm going to move on to you. I know you started in Los Angeles. Could you kind of talk about what it is out in LA, starting as a loader, now seeing?
Sure. I also went to Columbia College here, and I did their semester in LA program, so that took me out to LA. And then at the end of the program, we were encouraged to find an internship. So at that time, you would look in the back of the Hollywood Reporter and Variety, and there would just be listings of all the productions, and they might have a fax number or a phone number. There's no email listed, so that's how you could get in touch with them. And after reaching out to 30-plus productions, I reached out to one that I was like, this movie sounds stupid, I don't want to do this. It was called Looney Tunes Back in Action. I figured it was just like Space Jam 2, and I called, and kind of the right person picked up the phone. It was the assistant to the head producer, and she said, well, Warner Brothers is taking interns right now. What do you want to do? I was just hoping to be a PA on set. And I said, well, I'm interested in camera. So she said, well, let me see if the DP, Dean Cundy, who's a legend in this industry, wants an intern. And if you ask him, he'll say that I was forced upon him. He's got a very dry sense of humor. But gratefully, I accepted that and worked for no money on a movie for 5 months. But it was an incredible experience. And through that, and it was a big union production, and I had ACs on there just teaching me things. So that was like film school, times 10. Every day learning so much. And then that, I proved myself on that set with that crew. So then they brought me on as a camera PA, which was a paid position after that, which is not a union sanctioned position, but a kind of apprenticeship style way to get through. And then it was busy enough where they could bring me on another show as the loader and get my days on that show. and get me into the union. And so that's how I got in as a film loader.
And what year was that? When you joined?
I joined in '05.
Okay, 2005.
Yeah.
All right, and then Paul, I know you also did a lot of work in Los Angeles. Can you talk about, the early days in your career, working as a loader, and then moving up to First Day Seeing?
Yeah. Well, I started here in Chicago at Columbia College also.
Columbia represent.
Yeah. And at Columbia, I was very interested in camera, but I had gotten kind of pigeonholed as a gaffer because I was stupid enough to be willing to tie in anywhere, which, if you don't know, means illegally tying into the electric
Don't try it at
system.
home.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a very marketable skill, and so I was gaffing all the the advanced student projects at Columbia, and one came up, and this young man, Rick Sobin, was shooting it, and he and I really hit it off, and the movie ended, and I didn't think anything about it, but about a year later, I didn't realize he was a camera assistant. He was a union camera assistant, and about a year later, out of the blue, he called and said, "Hey, I'm working on this Oliver Stone movie, Natural Born Killers, and we need an intern. It doesn't really pay much, but I think you'd be great. Do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Yes, I'll be there tomorrow." And he said he was very apologetic. I can only get you $100 a day. Well, I was making about $90 a week then, so it was like Fat City. I was thrilled, and it really was like learning to swim by being thrown in a lake. I mean, but I learned a lot in a few weeks. And then after that, I moved out to Los Angeles because there was no work here, really, to speak of at that time.
What year was it?
That was 93, I want to say.
93, 94, 95.
Yeah, you remember.
Like it is now.
Not like it is now, no.
Oh,
There was less.
less, though.
Was there something going on that caused that? Did something happen?
I don't know.
Something happened, and actually, I think it involved Natural Born Killers. There was some financial shenanigans that people out in Hollywood weren't thrilled about. So my understanding was that they decided they were going to teach Chicago a lesson. There were plenty of other places they could go shoot. So for a few years, it was dead here. Actually, my connection here was strong, and what really propelled my career was two people out in the audience here, Steve and Linda, who they should. They took me under their wing, really, and it was thanks to Steve Pillar and Linda Gasco that I started to get real work, and I joined the union, and I worked with them as their loader, and they soon promoted me to second. They got me all the seconding opportunities they could, and really that's what got me going.
That's great. Love to hear, the helping each other up into the industry, because that's kind of how it is. It's who you know.
I want to take this opportunity, I've never done this in public, to thank both Paul and Bob for saving my life. In the situation with Bob was that we were working on the third Poltergeist film. If you haven't seen it, don't. But the Poltergeist, the little girl moved into the John Hancock building, and the Poltergeists occupied the building and got into their apartment. And the only way that they could get to their apartment was from the outside window washing rig that went from the 100th story down the side of the building. Not for me. I didn't like being on the top of the building, so I called Bob to come in. And the company liked me enough where I could say, "I'm a big baby and I'm too scared to go on the window washing rig. Please bring Bob in." So you saved my life.
Well, I didn't.
Why? Because I assumed I would fall.
You wouldn't have fallen.
Now, the bad news is that you missed the focus on the close-up of it.
And I think they're going to reprise the film after 50 years, and I think they're going to reshoot that. So maybe you should get back up there and
Yeah,
try
I take
again.
medication now, so I don't mind climbing ladders. But Paul, you may not remember, it was in LA. We were in an asparagus field or something. Did you know asparagus grow upside down? That part that you like is in the ground? Anyway, we were working for this guy who really didn't like me. And when it came for a reload, he was at my camera. We had 2 cameras. When it came for a reload, he called for you to come over and load the camera. Can you please get someone over here who knows how to load a camera?
Yeah.
And so you saved my life there. So thank you.
Yes. Well,
I needn't say that Colette say anytime I came into prep, she saved my life and has saved many people's lives too. So thank you. And I didn't know you worked on a Rocky movie. I worked on a Rocky movie too.
Which one?
I worked
did you
on
do?
Rocky V.
Well, I did 6. There were
You did 6.
like 20 years in between.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right, but Rocky V is so famous that when A&E, I think, one of the cable or one of the platforms ran on all Rocky all the time, they showed Rocky 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. 5. And would you agree with me that Sylvester Stallone was probably the worst person you ever worked with?
Absolutely not.
Oh, absolutely not?
I had a great experience.
Oh,
with him.
I'm sorry.
I mean,
Can you
great
tell us the
story.
worst?
So, oh no, but I'll tell you that why I had a good experience with him, and it pertains to film loading. So I think that because he was the producer on there, like I mean, especially starting from the beginning Rocky movies, it was just this indie film he was putting together. So he was really focused on saving money, and also he's thinking about editing while filming, so he's not filming too many takes. So we were doing a scene and it was handheld, so we had a 400-foot load on it. So you only get 5.5 minutes with that. And he wanted to do another take, and I said, oh, we should probably reload, like we had just enough film. But then he said, well, what do we have? I'm like, yeah, we'll just get the shot if you don't, if nobody messes up. And he said, oh no, let's take the risk. And so we did and got the shot, and then saved that film, so we didn't waste as much. But yeah, I don't know, I had a good experience working on I mean, it was tough, but it was fine. But I do have a crazy story of, I mean, it's not that crazy, but there are a lot of stories about him out there. And so just to put an image in your head, we were filming for 2 days at a meat packing plant, because of course, got to punch the sides of cows. And Schwarzenegger was the governor at the time, and he stopped by to say hi because they're friends. So it's interesting. But catering decided to serve steak one day. I don't eat meat, but a lot of people that did eat meat did not want to eat steak while we were there at the meatpacking plant. But I was in line getting food and catering, and Stallone's behind me in line, and he gets his steak, big steak, and then is waiting for other stuff. While he's waiting, he just picks it up with his bare hands and rips a bite out of it. That is so Rocky.
Well, I'll say why my experience was not as good as yours. I don't eat meat either, but that didn't have anything to do with it. So we set up Rocky doesn't fight. He manages another guy in this movie, and we shot first in Philadelphia, and then we went back and recreated the fight scene that happens in the street, where Rocky fights the kid that he's managing. So we set up the shots, and we have a film camera down on what we call a rocker plate. You guys still have rocker plates? So we're down the rocker plate. The one I had didn't have a lock on it, so I had to hold it. So although Sylvester, or Sly, as we called him, or Sir, so he wasn't directing, but all the fight scenes he kind of directed, so he wanted to see the shot. So I got down, anyone who's used a rocker plate will understand, I got down on my hands and knees and tilted it up the way that it had to be so he could see the shot. And he's looking, and he comes over and sits on me like I'm an apple box. and he had done all these, steroids and things, and you could see that. So he had this bony ass that he kind of got into the sway back of my spine. So maybe one reason why I have some problem. And then, what was the other thing? I forgot the other thing. Anyway, that's enough. Of
And you were firsting on that?
Yeah,
That
I
was
was.
the first
I
AC job?
was the focus. So also he wanted to see the handheld work in the fight. So I have an operator who really was key. He was my Steve Hiller, who we were exactly the same age. We found out and became very good friends. Hello. In any event, he always had a cigar, the stub of a cigar, unlit in his mouth, and I was never sure whether it was lit or unlit. So George has the camera, and Rocky says he wants to see the shot. So the two of us grab the camera to put it on Rocky's shoulder. And so we have the hand on the mat box, and George has his cigar in his hand, and I brush my hand against it. And I'm thinking, oh, is it on? And I'm getting all nervous. And I said, George, I said, get that fucking cigar out of my face, as we put down the camera on Sylvester with a big cigar in his mouth. And he does that. All assistants know this evil eye that somehow turns like this and looks at you. So that's maybe why we didn't get along. Not you, Sly. No. George, see, George has it.
Oh, wow. Great stories. I can't wait to hear some more. My big question for everyone is kind of who taught you how to handle film? What was your experience like? How were you told how to load the camera into the film into the camera, how to change mags, kind of that whole process?
I mean, initially, Columbia College, Dana Cupper, who is teaching
Dana
film
Cupper,
loading classes today and tomorrow. She's incredible. But
She is.
we had all the different types of film cameras and got to learn about all the different mags and the camera assistance manual. What's it called? Camera handbook. The professional camera assistance manual. That was all super helpful. And even when right after I started the internship with Dean Cundy on Looney Tunes, he was doing like a spec short. Basically, they were trying to film a few scenes of something to get funding to make the whole feature. So he was volunteering his time to shoot that. So he asked me, have you ever loaded a Panavision mag before? And I'm like, yep, I'm all good. So I went out there as the loader and second on that and got to prove myself right away. But it did stem from learning that at Columbia. And if you don't have the opportunity of film school, you can learn it upstairs.
Anyone else want to share, early days of learning? Maybe
Yeah.
any mishaps that you had?
Oh, mishaps. Oh, no. You don't want to start on that. I watched.
We want all the drama.
I watched.
Let's do haps, then mishaps.
I watched a reel of, I think it was 16 millimeter film, unexposed, fall out the door of the magazine fell off, and I watched a roll down a hill, and it did it perfectly. It didn't wobble or fall or anything. It went all the way to the core, and it was a 1,000-foot roll.
And just for context, how much money did that cost?
Oh, I don't know.
But that's at least
Certainly cost more money than they were paying me.
Yes.
It gave them a reason to not pay me anymore. Get out of here. You'll never work in this town again. That was one of my first jobs, and then I got to work a lot anyway.
There
I
you
don't
go.
believe it when they say that.
Anyone else? Any, horror stories to share when you were, early in your career learning how to work with film?
I've got one. There was a camera called an Arri 3, and it was a MOS camera. So you could shoot high speed with it. You just couldn't shoot sync sound with it. So I got on this commercial with a really good cameraman, a guy named Paul Von Brock, used to be in our local 666. He's passed away, but great guy.
Coolie eye.
Yeah, shot Cooley High. Anyway, so they said, okay, we're doing this McDonald's shoot. It's on an ice skating rink in Highland Park, somewhere up north. And it's a McDonald's commercial, and we're getting, this camera now has 1,000-foot mags, which it didn't come out with 1,000-foot mags. It only had 400-foot mags. So this was a brand new thing, and it was a geared magazine. And I'd never used it. Actually, I don't think many people had used it at this point. They said, but the production company was very cheap, said, we're not going to give you a prep day. They tried not to give prep days. If you can imagine going in and doing something and not getting to prep the camera, it's not a good feeling. So I decided to go anyway to the prep because I'd never used these magazines. And it was at Victor Duncan, and which is a rental house locally. And I got the camera and I scratch tested. So one thing you do with magazines when you prep a camera is you scratch test the magazine. You put film that hasn't been through a camera and you run it at the highest speed, possible to make sure you don't have any scratches, that it's not scratching the emulsion. So I did do this. One thing I did not do was a 1,000-foot dummy load. So a dummy load is a load of film that may or may not have been through a camera, but you just put it in there to make sure that it can handle the 1,000 feet. Well, I didn't have a 1,000-foot dummy load to put in. So I prepped the best I could on a day I wasn't getting paid. The next day we had an afternoon call, and we were going to shoot a little before magic hour into magic hour. And the camera loaded the 1,000-foot mags now that I got the Kodak film, and I had 2 magazines, loaded both of them, and no second, by the way. Not only did they not pay for a prep, they didn't want to pay me for a second or a loader. That's why they got me the 1,000-foot magazine. So we only have 3 rolls of film, so you load the 2 mags you have, and then maybe one other time, and that's it. Well, I ended up loading that. I ended up, instead of with 3 rolls of film at the end of the day, I had about 6 or 7 or 8, because the camera would run about to 300 feet, 350 feet, and then it was also cold out, so cold affects how film runs through a camera. And so the film would hit, I don't know if the torque got really high when the roll got smaller on the one side, and it snapped the film. So I'm like, oh, man. So, okay, gotta run to the dark room. It wasn't a dark room, it was a changing bag or a tent. So I gotta run over there, and everybody wait. Kid on some skates on this skating rink, gotta sit down. All right, and then I went and I rethreaded. I thought, well, maybe it'll work. Maybe I'll just rethread it, the 600 feet that was left, and I'll do it. That's the fastest way to do it. So I restrung the magazine, came back out, breathing hard. So put it in the camera. We rolled another maybe 400 feet, and then again, snap. I'm like, oh no. So about 400 feet is all I'm going to be able to get. But I only had 1,000-foot mags of film, except for the ones I was creating, these short ends as I went along. So that was very frustrating and a horrible day. But we got the shots, and Paul was very understanding, and the DP. The production company, not so much, but Paul was very understanding. So.
How would you have been able to prevent that if you had prepped with 100-foot,
Well,
1,000-foot
I think
dummy?
what they did was, because there was really I couldn't go to the internet and find out about these magazines or anything. This was in the late 80s maybe. And so what I did was, I told the I told Victor Duncan, who was the rental company, and I described it to them, and then they did some research. And so several weeks later, I got a call back that says, well, we really need to, there's a crystal base that's on the bottom of that camera that makes it run different speeds of crystal. So there's a ramp, there's a little screw inside, and it affects a ramp that you can ramp how fast the camera gets up to speed. So it really needs to be ramped way down. So fortunately, I was only going 48 frames or 40 frames. So it would ramp, it wasn't ramping, it was going right to speed. So I didn't have that adjusted right, and I didn't know about it. So, I mean,
Okay,
it was my responsibility, not my fault, but still.
Yeah, a good, a hard learning opportunity.
I gotta say, that's not a disaster.
It wasn't
That sounds
fun.
stressful to me.
A disaster when the first time we moved up, I moved up with Paul von Brock. So the first time I'm pulling focus,
Same
I'd done a
guy,
lot
same
of commercials and things. First time I'm pulling focus on a TV show. I had Mike Cohnhorst as my second, and we decided to just move the cameras already up on a head and sticks. We'd move it together. It needed about 2 feet of moving, and the camera fell off and hit the ground. And broke the lens
Okay,
and
all
broke
right,
the
you-
camera. That's a disaster.
That's a disaster.
That's a disaster.
That is a disaster.
Sorry. I mean to demean you in any way.
It's all right. It was embarrassing, mine, but maybe not as embarrassing as yours.
Paul, what about you? Any early loader stories?
No animals were hurt.
Nothing quite along those lines, but what occurs to me is I was Dana Cupper was just such a great teacher, and I was very confident that I could put film into a magazine and take exposed film out safely, reliably every time. But I hadn't ever had a job as a loader. And I got a call to come out to Los Angeles to replace a loader who was being fired from The Usual Suspects. And
Do you know why they were being fired?
yeah, this person really didn't know what she was doing and wasn't upfront about that. They had a lot of problems, I think some flashed film and a completely out of whack inventory, which is maybe the most important part of the film loader's job after safely downloading the exposed film, is to keep an accurate inventory. And she had no idea what she was doing. So it was a total mess, and they lost some footage and things, so they had to make a change. So Rick Sobin was there again. He was the second assistant on that, and he said, I know a guy, he can be here Monday. He didn't tell them I'd never loaded before. So nobody knew that. So, but I was confident because I had a good procedure.
Yeah.
But when I got out there, showed up on set, what I wasn't prepared for, we were shooting 5 cameras, we had 4 film stocks, and everything went so fast that you had to, being able to put the film in and take it out safely, you had to be able to do that. Thank God I was solid with doing that, because that's the easiest part of the job. Managing all the other things was hard, and that was a good lesson. So that's kind of my take on early film loading experience.
Can you talk more about what do you mean by 4 different film stocks, just for anyone who doesn't know?
Well,
what are the logistics involved in that?
Shooting film, like nowadays on a digital camera, you just go into a menu and click a button, and if you want to change the color temperature, the sensitivity of the film. Well, back then, you had to change to a completely different film stock. If you were shooting day exterior, interiors, there were different color temperature balances, and so you had to have different film stocks for those different circumstances, and often they would change unexpectedly. The DP might be planning to shoot one film stock, and then it's cloudy, and so they need a faster stock or something like that. So you had to have different film stocks at the ready all the time, and just like similar to what Bob was saying, productions didn't want to pay for any extra magazines. So in a situation like that, what I found, we had 5 cameras and enough magazines for 1, and 4 film stocks. So you had to always be at the ready, and that was a real lesson. The other thing that was great about it, though, was, as I'd mentioned, the previous loader who was let go had no idea how to do an inventory. So they were already 2 weeks into shooting, and it was just a mess. And I didn't know how to do an inventory either. But I had to learn by fixing all of her mistakes and getting it correct. And it was a great way to learn. It's really a great way to learn, is to have to fix something that's truly and profoundly broken. And I was able to succeed. So it was a good education.
Wow, yeah.
So related to that, so my or George Kohut on this show where I was like 14 categories as the second assistant. I didn't know any of that stuff either about loadings. And we had to, the companies, particularly the cheap ones, wanted to know exactly what happened to every frame of film, every foot of film, actually. They didn't go to frames, but every foot of film. So if you shot 1,000 feet of film, they wanted to know we didn't really talk about the filmmaking process and the chemical process, which is a little too late for us to get into, but they didn't want to just develop the entire roll. They wanted to develop the shots that they thought that they were going to use, the ones that the script supervisor noted that they wanted to. So we had to note how much that the size of the roll that we shot, how much of it we printed once the negative was done, how much of it we didn't print, and how much of it we just threw away, which happened a lot because if you needed, in the case with Sly, you had a short end, we could use them again. That wasn't the point I was going to make, but anyway, my mentor George says, well, it's okay, you'll get all the numbers, you'll get them from me off my camera logs. Well, George believed that all you needed as a first assistant was a lead pencil and a scissors, which any of you who have done it knows that that's pretty minimalist. The problem with the pencil was not so much that it was a pencil and not ink, but no, it doesn't. But that how he made his figures, his handwriting. Every digit, every number that he wrote looked like a 1. It was just a scratch. So it'd have take 1. Everything would be take 1, scene 1, take 1, and ran 111 feet. And I had to figure it out anyway.
If he was a DP, he would have got a T11.
That's right.
That does kind of lead to my next question of just, camera department operation. So back with film, can you talk about the discipline and the communication required between the loader, the first AC, the second AC? Who's telling who, hey, I need to just get this new tungsten film swapped out, or, we've got X amount of feet left. How's that communication kind of happening? What's that look like?
Well, yeah, first you say, is this on? Well, at first, we weren't very high tech, and a lot of us didn't know stuff. Hollywood had made these films for 100 years, and it was only really in the late 60s that Chicago were making these films. So if we hadn't worked with LA crews, we really didn't know exactly how it worked. So at first you stood at the camera and said, hey, get me a 50 millimeter lens. Then we went to walkies and we had all our own stuff. And I don't know, you guys may communicate with your phones now. I don't know. We also had hand signals because you had to keep tabs on how many feet each shot ran for 2 reasons. One, for this inventory, but also you wanted to know if it was a 200-foot scene. If you only had 180 feet, you wanted to make that change. So we would indicate with our fingers what the footage counter. They told us on the camera what the footage counter was.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of stuff.
That reminded me of something I wanted to mention that is a big change. It's hard to imagine now, but it was only recently that production started using walkie-talkies widely. I remember on a big movie that I was the A second on, having to really fight to get. I wanted a walkie-talkie for me and for my loader because we were going to be out on these remote locations, and I wanted to be able to communicate back to the camera truck with my loader. And they refused it. And so I went out and bought 2 walkie-talkies. And then the production manager, for some reason, I guess was embarrassed by that or something. So he said, no, all right, I will get you 2 walkies. So I was able to return the ones I bought. But there was that level of resistance. And so we communicated, like Peter was saying, with hand signals, a lot of hand signals, and a lot of yelling.
Right. So I had an assistant. You all know Mauricio Gutierrez. He was really fast, this guy. So if I just called to him and he's on the truck, I'd say, Mauricio, and boom, he'd be in my face. And I'd have to say, would you please go back to the truck and bring the thing? So walkie-talkies helped a lot with that.
Anyone else? Working on set, the communication needed, even just like communicating loader.
Yeah, I want to say what the perfect situation was, that if we don't talk, if the crew doesn't talk to each other, the camera crew all day, then you've done everything perfectly. Because what happens is that your second can pretty much guess the lens that you're going to do. I mean, this is back in the day, it was a lot more formulaic, that you do a wide master shot, and then it must be me. I'm screwing this up. Yeah. And then you'd go into close-ups, and you'd use certain filters. This is all happening, the filters are happening in front and behind the lens. It's not anything you can dial in like you can today. And your second assistant, first of all, you as the first assistant would start making assumptions, and you were almost always right. And then your second, who knew that when you had a new setup, you always went to the zoom lens. You just turn around when they cut the shot and said, okay, we're moving on. You'd turn around and she'd be there with the lens. So I used to think that if we didn't talk, then we had a perfect day. Of course, we never had a perfect day. And in fact, I worked as long as I did because my goal was to have that perfect day. And if I'd ever done, I'd have walked out and never come back. But I was 72 years old when I stopped coming back, but it wasn't because I had a perfect day.
That kind of leads to my last big question for you guys, discussing the transition from film to digital. When did that happen for you all? And was it a difficult process or something that you embraced when it was happening?
For me, I actually stopped being an AC and loader right when it happened, because I was realizing that I didn't want to do it. My body was telling me that being on set all day, standing on concrete, was not making my legs happy. So found a different path, and now that's why I'm sort of behind the scenes working at Keslow Camera. Yeah, so it was like all film for me, and so my perspective was that I then had to learn all about the new digital stuff when I started with Keslow, and I was a little nervous at first because I was sort of not directly involved in the industry for a few years, and now had to learn all about this stuff I'd been hearing about, the Red, and now Arri had come out with the Alexa, and so I was a little intimidated by all of it because I thought it was so different. But then once started sort of getting into it, realizing, well, it's not that different. But from my standpoint of things, I think that the differences that I see mostly are just how things are handled on set. There's a lot more stuff now. You have 5,000 cables and so many electronics that you didn't have before. I felt like the amount of gear and it was consolidated more. It was simpler, not simpler, but there was less to manage with all of the volume of gear. But then you just had to focus more on maintaining it. I mean, the first AC is checking the movement of the camera every single day and making sure that's operating properly. And so there was I felt like a little more hands-on involvement from like a repair standpoint, making sure everything was maintained properly, and focusing on that and less on all the wireless stuff that I feel like takes up a lot of the time of the camera department now.
You mentioned checking the gate. This is called Hairs in the Gate. Can you just explain briefly what that means and why it's standard after you've done your 3 takes? It's called Check the Gate.
Yeah, so the actual physical film can shred little hairs, fine little fragments from the film. As it, imagine it's moving through the camera really quickly. So sometimes you can get a little bits. So you want to see if the film gate, which is where the film is being exposed, you want to see if maybe a little hair got caught in there. And if so, it could have been flapping around the whole time and ruining the shot. So that's why you want to check it before anybody moves on, before anybody starts breaking down the set into another set, the actors leave, whatever. You want to make sure so then you can get one more take just to be sure.
Thank you. And then Paul and Bob, you guys moved, from firsting on film to now firsting in digital. How was that process in terms of just kind of the stress of, having to pull off of a monitor? You're no longer on the camera. Can you just talk about that transition?
Yeah, that was the big transition. So, okay, so you went from a situation like, okay, the camera operator and the first assistant were like joined at the hip. You were right next to them on a film, back in the film days. Most pictures you see of assistants where they're going to be sitting like this, next to the camera, standing next to the camera operator right there. And a lot of the communication that was done focus-wise and was done between the operator and the first assistant. You might say pull forward a little bit, because he's looking at an optical viewfinder, so he's seeing pretty well. He's the only one that really sees it. Even if you have video assist, it's not clear about focus. So the operator's going pull forward on our eye. Okay, on the left, go to the other eye, and then you'll be a whole communication there that's whispered between you. So that I missed. I miss now that collaboration with the camera operator.
So the operator is like guiding you through the focus in a way?
I mean,
okay.
they're saying like if it's a fine focus, on a wide lens you're fine, but when he's really guiding you in, he's going to make the shot work. You want to make the shot a workable shot. You don't want to.
And even like if there's going to be a rack coming up, the
I mean,
operator can tell you,
get on
panning,
the eye and get ready and drop. Then you have constant communication, which was really helpful. So that doesn't happen now in the digital era, at least not in the same way.
Yeah.
I used to, I had trouble memorizing the script, and often you'd pull focus on a line, and I took a lot of my cues from the boom operators who always somehow knew what the line was, and I'd watch them get ready to move, and I'd know it was time for me to do it. And then if you're not doing that on set, you don't see the boom. If you see the boom in the monitor, they're doing their job wrong.
Paul, what about you?
I just kind of want to second what Bob said. I really missed that communication with the operator. That was a special relationship, and when it was good, it was fantastic. They gave you so much good feedback, and you got to know whether your operator could see focus well or whether they couldn't, and so it was just a pleasure to work with an operator who could see focus and knew how to give you feedback, and that doesn't exist anymore.
Right now, like a first AC is off in a corner.
Yeah, and pulling focus off a monitor is a totally different thing. It's a totally different skill. It's different than it used to be.
I'd add the dolly grip to that special relationship that you had.
You said the dolly grip?
Right, because sometimes you could have them adjust the shot in a way that would help you.
Yeah, I always found that more frustrating when they adjusted the shot. Wasn't my favorite thing. Still isn't.
The thing that was hard to get used to, though, I mean, the main thing on the digital side was now I'm looking at monitor. You know, I still tried to be close to the camera if I could, because I still saw value in, you know, seeing an overview of what's going on the set instead of being in another room. Sometimes you have to be. Now, DPs they quickly loved the fact that I wasn't standing next to the camera, blocking their lighting or, you know, making, you know, it's nice to not have a person there. It's nice to just, you know, have, you know, room to light. So I understand why it's never going to go back, but it was, you know, it just is a different way of working. I'm reacting to a focus that already happened. I mean, I should be in focus. So I'm looking at a monitor in another room or in the same room, and I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to adjust here. Now there's latency in the image you're getting. You're not getting it, it's not happening immediate. Latency's less now, but when you started, latency was a problem. So you'd pull focus and you'd be reacting to what's already happened. So it's focus reacting rather than focus prediction, where in the film days, we would set marks down, or we would predict where they were going, or we would see, you know, the relationship of the actor with the mark, and we would be able to bring them into focus. And then that's when my operator would say, okay, pull a little forward. You'd get really close, and then you wanted to make that shot work, you know, for that hold on the actor right there. So that I miss all of that. The old way of working, I miss a lot for focus. I think you agree.
Yeah.
And you,
Yes, very
you
much.
probably,
Yeah, well,
And we are at time if you want to kind of tie it
yeah.
up in a nice bow for
Well,
us.
let me just say this. The reason, if I can just say, when I was introduced and on the, maybe on the paperwork, Divergent is the last credit that I get. And I proved to everybody on that show that I couldn't make the changeover. And I got fired. Because we were, and the thing that you didn't get to talk about was there's no rehearsal or anything. And I maybe I was too old, actually. And I couldn't figure out, because it was I was so used to planning it all out. We'd know where the whole room, we'd know exactly where, if the operator said, I'm going to focus on you, I would know already what that the second
Distance.
row was 14 feet away.
Yeah, the distance. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for, you know, giving such interesting stories. It's been a great conversation. Yes, round of applause.
and for our moderator.
Oh, really?
Yes. Thank you.
If anybody wants to ask us any questions, we'll hang around for a little bit too.
I want to say one thing.